Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hutter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemar, the sergeant at arms of the PBA.
And today we're excited to have two special guests with us. Orthopedic surgeon, right? Michael Sileo and David Cesarino, the orthopedic PA. You guys work together and you have this practice helping men and women out there of all kinds. So just tell us a little bit about yourselves and your practice and what, your most recent project that you've been working on.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you both for having us here today. So Dave and I are actually here today to talk a little bit about alpha male restoration and our men's health clinic. Just as a little bit of background, I'm an orthopedic surgeon full-time. Dave's an orthopedic physician assistant. We both work together full-time. And that's to a large extent where this alpha male restoration, which is our men's health clinic, sort of evolved from. So one of the things that we're both very aware of is the benefits of TRT and peptide therapy have, not just in the orthopedic realm, but in the health, wellness, and longevity world. And so that's why we're here today, is to hopefully answer some questions that we have and educate your audience about what not only what we do, but what some of these things are.
Yeah. So, a lot of our members as police officers, obviously, they exercise regularly. They take care of their bodies. It's a big aspect of their lifestyles and honestly, big aspect of their mental health. People do it for their own mental, therapy, exercise and working out. But that's not exclusive to just police officers and our members, but, everybody out there in the world today. I feel like exercise is at the forefront of a lot of conversations now. It's definitely more common to live a healthy lifestyle than say it was 20, 30 years ago.
100%.
Right? I mean, everybody's in the gyms now. Everybody's lifting weights, running 5Ks. I feel like as a kid, if you told somebody you're going to be running a 5K, you almost looked at, crookedly. Like why are you going to go do that to yourself? But now it's commonplace. People are doing it for fun.
You ever seen a picture of your parents or your grandparents at like your age?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you're like, I feel like I look younger than they did at like my age.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is probably a little biased, but I also think to a large extent it's true. I do think that in 2026 now, health, well-being, taking ownership of not only your physical health, but your mental health and your overall care is much more in vogue. I think it's encouraged more. I think there's whole communities where it's embraced as like a lifestyle. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen some of the literature recently or the articles out talking about how alcohol consumption is at an all-time low.
Yes.
Compared to what it was 20 or 30 years ago. I think that's a byproduct of this as well. And that obviously ties into, hormone therapy and peptides as well.
I was watching your guys like Instagram and some of the reels and stuff like that. I know you brought up like the longevity, like now like we look like healthier. But so with the testosterone in particular, do you feel like the testosterone levels are dropping in males at this point in the younger generation now compared to what it was in I saw a video like the 1970s or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So they go back and look at, there aren't like direct studies, but looking at like extrapolating, like men, say like a 70-year-old man in the 70s had like an average testosterone level of 450 to 500, where you get like guys in their 35s to 40s have like an average testosterone level in like the 400s. So it's like today you have a guy, like people listening to the podcast that have a lower testosterone than a 70-year-old in the 1970s. And there's a bunch of different reasons why that's happening. We definitely have more, like there are people that are active, but more people are living very sedentary lifestyles. They're not eating very good food. They're not getting out there and exercising. I think like in our realm of the people that we know, we know people who are exercising more and they're definitely like up on optimizing their health. But with some like recent studies and stuff that's come out, we're talking about testosterone and peptide therapies. Now, testosterone isn't as like bastardized as it has been. And usually it's because of like the abuse scandals in the past.
Right.
But there's a lot of information showing that getting a guy with, low or suboptimal testosterone and replacing that to within the normal range, but in like the higher end, you get significant mental health benefits, general health benefits, you'll look better, feel better. Our whole thing is like look better, feel better, live better. And that's with optimizing testosterone. And like,
yeah, so I was also looking at some of your social media posts, and I liked the catchphrase you guys are using too: "Make men manly again," right? And that kind of goes along with that same aspect of back in the 70s. Maybe men were a little more manly than what they are now in the 2020s.
Yeah.
And lifestyle has play a large role in that.
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, I mean, overall, there's definitely been a clear trend that overall total testosterone levels in men has been slowly declining over the last 40 or 50 years. As Dave alluded to, the reason for that is likely multifactorial, whether it's lifestyle, diet. Unfortunately, we're definitely a little bit more of an obese society than we were 40 or 50 years ago. Not all things are worse now. I think the fact that, as we alluded to, less alcohol use is a good thing. Less people are smoking, which is obviously a good thing. But remember, smoking is an appetite suppressant, so these things are all interrelated. But you have that, and then I think, how old are you? I'm going to be 50 this year. How old are you guys?
I'm going to be 40 later this month.
40.
I'm 32.
So I might be the outlier here, but I grew up in the 80s with like professional wrestling and steroids and abuse. And what I think a lot of people in my generation, I'm going to separate myself for a second, what they sort of associate with anything related to testosterone is sort of this world of like abuse and some of the health problems that can come along with severe abuse over a long period of time. And so that's one of the hurdles that we're working to overcome, is that a lot of people in my generation associate anything, when you talk about TRT or testosterone therapy, they associate it with like Hulk Hogan and some of these other guys who had clear health issues that were likely related to abuse. And what we really want to hammer home is that TRT, when we talk about what is TRT, what we're really talking about is getting men into the therapeutic or optimized range, but a normal physiologic range. So
not something through the roof that's going to make you look like a mountain of a person.
Because that's where you can run into problems. So just very, very briefly, normal testosterone total T can be anywhere between 300 and 1,000 based on the lab, just as a general marker. The problem is, one of the questions a lot of patients will ask is, well, what's normal for me? I'm 32 years old. And the unfortunate answer is we don't really know, because that data is for all men. So technically, an 80-year-old man with a total T of 300 and a 32-year-old man with a total T of 300 are both, quote, normal. But that's weird. It's obviously weird, and it's obviously, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's one of the struggles, is that 32-year-old male, for an 80-year-old, he might be crushing it and doing great, and he feels great. He's, crushing his days. He's got lean muscle mass. He's got lots of energy. But for a 32-year-old, that might not be the case. So one of the things you struggle with is understanding that it's not just a blood test and a number on a sheet, or a couple numbers on a sheet, that you're really treating. You're treating the overall big picture. And we're trying to get guys to be optimized, not supraphysiologic, meaning Hulk Hogan. We're talking about getting into the range where you get all the benefits, or most of the benefits, of having your T numbers normalized, while you're minimizing or eliminating, hopefully, the risks that go along with that.
Right. And when we met a few months ago, we were talking about the obvious benefits that go along with, an alpha male type of treatment. Especially as police officers, of course, it makes sense for us to be in good shape physically, strong enough, fast enough to be able to, fight off a bad guy, fight off the people that are resisting arrest, the bad actors out there. But we also focus a lot of our episodes on mental health also. Being in good shape and having, a good physical stature obviously helps your mental health as well. Because when you're in pain all the time, when you're not as strong as you used to be, as fast as you used to be, that could start playing games with your head, right? I mean, that could put you into a bad place mentally.
I think also in recovery, though, especially on guys on our job, like we work really weird schedules. And I feel like that kind of takes a toll on guys in our profession.
That's not just conjecture. That's like, it's proven.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It depends on how scientific you want to get, but usually overnight shift workers, guys in high stress jobs, their cortisol levels are going to be high pretty much chronically. Cortisol is there to have your body ready to do something like right then when you need it. So usually will downregulate some of the feel good hormones or neurotransmitters that your body has. So if I get into it, stop me. But what happens is when guys have high stress jobs, these other feel good, chemicals in the brain take a hit, because cortisol doesn't care if you feel good right now. It wants you to be able to sprint and catch someone or get away from someone.
Think fight or flight.
We don't choose really when we're going to do that. That's something that just happens on our job.
That's sprung on us. So you need to have that springing ability.
You need that there when you need it.
When that's happening very frequently, you get a big downregulation of those other recovery and feeling good and coming down from that very stressed state. And when that happens, that also takes a hit on the testosterone as well. So guys with high cortisol, low testosterone, low serotonin, low dopamine, they're going to feel garbage, all of the time. They're going to feel depressed. They're going to be irritable. You're not going to be able to do, a good job the times when they don't need to be like up here,
Right.
So getting your testosterone level checked, and we want to make the big thing is this isn't like the cure all for everything, right? Just throwing testosterone at everybody isn't going to make the world like the best place ever. Maybe.
But it'll help.
But so a guy with low testosterone, with irritable mood, he's, anxious, maybe a little depressed, instead of going on 5 different medications to fix all of these things, maybe we just bring a normally occurring hormone to a normal level and see if that's, good enough to make him feel better. In most cases, it will be if the numbers are low.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends. And I know we talked about like the range and everything and what that means. And, a lot of like what we do is just making sure that your treatment plan is catered to you.
Mm-hmm.
So your dose might not be higher than or lower than someone else because we want it to be, but there is different like sensitivities to testosterone. So some guy might feel great at the 300, if that's where he is, and some other guy might feel crappy or tired at 600.
Now, is that because maybe they lived their life in their 20s at, say, a 700 level, and now I'm at 5, I feel crappy because I used to be at 7? Or like, how does that work?
After 30, you lose about a percentage of your testosterone per year.
1%.
So 1%. So that goes on forever. So, women reach, menopause, and it's like this big drastic change, like very quickly. Men, we do this over a long period of time, and we try to figure out like what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And guys, either they won't get checked, or they'll go to someone who's not very well versed in, what these levels mean, or what's like considered low or not low, and then, say that they're fine, their levels are fine. We get guys all the time that come in there, they say my levels are fine, but I feel like crap, and we do some more investigating, and, there's different numbers we look at, but free testosterone is one of the big things. So guys can have like a good total number, but their free is very low because of some other processes in the body. So adding some more testosterone to the mix there is definitely going to help.
So I'm glad you brought up total testosterone and free testosterone, because before we met a couple months ago, I never knew what the difference was.
Yeah.
So can you just break down a quick, give everybody an idea what the difference between free testosterone and total testosterone is?
So you're
One minute or less, though.
So you're total,
because he could go on for a while.
Dave is incredibly well versed.
Yeah, well versed and passionate about it.
Yeah,
like you
it's
care about
like
this.
making like a big. Well, we have a bunch of guys on treatment now, and you see them come back, and they're like, I get hugged all the time, or they say like my wife loves
Not to sound dramatic, but like we've seen it change people's lives, and I know that sounds like hyperbole, and that's not my intent, but it's changed people's lives for the better. And the important part, before we get to the free test and total test, in our orthopedic practice, I have a saying all the time to my patients, which is that I'm working on people, I'm not working on cars. Because a lot of what we do in orthopedics, it's technical, it's mechanical. You're putting a plate on a bone, you're putting a tendon back where it's supposed to attach. But the reality is, everyone's recovery is a little bit different, right? We kind of knew generally what the recovery is going to look like, but some people take a little longer. Some people recover a little quicker, which we should talk about peptides when we talk about that. But, and so I always say we're working on people, we're not working on cars. The physiology of all 4 of us is a little bit different. Same thing when you're managing people's hormone levels, is that you have to listen to what the symptoms are, listen to the patient, hear where they are. Don't just treat a number, which we've seen is very frequently what's happening in other circumstances. And what I really want your audience to take home is it's not about just the absolute number. It's about what are the symptoms? How do you feel? How are you responding to treatment?
Right.
But free test, total test. That's a good point.
The numbers give us an idea of like what we can do, but it's not like an end all. Or like, this is your number. You should be fine. I can't help you anymore. That's a big thing. So with that, total testosterone is all the testosterone your body makes. Your testicles make testosterone. So a lot of it, 97 to 99% of it is actually bound to proteins that make it unusable for your body. So you have this whole big number, but if you have less than 1% of it that is free, your body actually can't access any of that. So your free testosterone is what your body can actually use. We do some calculations to like what percentage you are free, but if you make it easy, say like the number is 100. So if a guy has a total test of 100, they both have 100. If one guy's free testosterone is 1% and the other guy's is 3%, that means that 3% guy has 3 times more free testosterone than the other guy. Mm-hmm. So I might have to raise that first guy to 300 to get them to feel the same way. And then further from that, there's like sensitivity of the receptors and everything. So it's kind of like, we do some stuff. We talk about like what the goals are, how you're feeling, everything, what your numbers are. We put you on a dose, and then we kind of have to just let it run for a couple of months, and recheck your blood. And we do that every 2 to 3 months for the first year, I got to see like where things go. And I know we'll get into some of the risks, in a little bit. But it's really just, this is it's very personalized in terms of like what we do.
And a lot of men also expect there to be like this, I took it for 2 weeks and I don't feel any different. And that's a big part of educating them as well, letting our patients understand that it takes 2 months, 3 months sometimes before you start to really notice the benefit. Right. Some people do notice it right away, but most don't. And so that's part of the education, is getting people on the same page where they understand this isn't going to fix your whole life this week, but it's going to help if you just bear with us and follow the process. Make sure we're being tight with blood work. Make sure you're keeping your follow-up appointments early on, especially to make sure we get things right.
Yeah, usually between like 4 to 6 months, we can have you like on an optimized dose.
Okay.
Some people, I've heard some people say it takes like a year and everything. And I asked them like how often they got their blood checked. And it's like every 6 months or 8 months or whatever. I'm like, you're just, you're doing this treatment and we're not doing the right thing.
They're not monitoring.
And talking about the treatment, how often do they come to you guys for the treatment?
They come once a month. Coming once a month, we give you 4 pre-filled syringes at your dose. You inject yourself at home. So we primarily do the injections. It's the easiest way to easiest way to calibrate things. It's a very small needle. I mean, no one really complains about it being painful or anything. Mm-hmm. You do it at home. I usually give you the first one in the office just to show you how to do everything. But everything's pre-filled. So you're not doing any chemistry at home. You're not mixing anything or pulling anything out. Everything is just right there. We give you all the supplies you need. Everything is labeled as per the DEA specifications for anything. So like if you're traveling or anything like that, it has all the info it needs on it. So
like any other medication would.
Exactly. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, it's important. It's important. I mean, listen, we're at the PBA headquarters, right? Like testosterone's a controlled substance. Right, and so there are strict laws and regulations with regard to how those medications are handled, how they're prescribed, how they're monitored. And the way that we manage our patients is we like to see you every month, especially early on, to make sure that you're doing your follow-up. You're not either having an issue or some other issue going on. So that's the best way to sort of make sure that things are not only done properly to the patient, but monitored.
It's truly beneficial though, because if somebody is having an issue, going monthly, you'll figure that out quicker, and then
you're on it.
We also have like a dedicated phone for our clients too. So they have I get texts all the time, text calls, I have a question about this, or, what do you think about this? Or can I move my appointment? That kind of stuff. But it's not like see you in a month, we have no contact with you. This is, the whole point of this is it's hormone therapy is very personalized to people, because like a little bit can go a long way, and sometimes people aren't managed as well as they should be. So like a big thing for us really with the whole clinic was, let's have a place where people can come in, feel comfortable, like develop a relationship. You're not just like you're not at a mill, Like I know like pretty much all of my guys, in there. I know what dose they're on, how frequently they're taking it, what their total and free test was last time. I think it's really important with this kind of stuff. I don't think anything like that really existed, which is why we made Alpha Male.
Right. It's almost like finding the fountain of youth, right? It's like, because as you're getting older, your testosterone's dropping.
It's a part of it, yeah.
Right. You're feeling less energetic, less strong, slower. And doing a therapy like this can help you feel more vibrant and energetic again.
The whole goal is to kind of replace it to the level you were in like your 20s.
Right.
Right. As physiologically, the same as that time in your life.
Right.
We always talk about like humans are like one of the few animals that like outlive their reproductive years, right? Mm-hmm. So like you get most animals will die off after they can't like make young anymore.
Right.
But we're living for like 50 years past that, and the hormones that allow you to be what you need to be, drop off at that point, and we're wondering why we don't feel like we felt when we were 20 in our 50s, 60s, and 70s, and a lot of it is this level that we know drops off, every year.
And you're optimizing the person's performance, mentally and physically.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about the benefits of TRT just generically, right? Like there's clearly a benefit with regard to improving mood, not only stability, but your overall sense of being when it's done properly and monitored properly. We're going to assume that. There's clearly benefits to maintaining muscle mass or even building muscle mass, again, if it's done properly. And we'll tie into why that's important for longevity. There's obviously benefits with libido. There's benefits with recovery. There's all these benefits that are clearly a good thing when this is done properly. As far as longevity, you know, we're talking, I guess I'm the senior statesman of this podcast today, but you know, as you get older, and you guys will find this out if you haven't already, but like, it's a little harder to bounce back. It's a little harder when you have injuries or when you have surgeries, which I've had to have over the last couple of years, not by choice, for orthopedic stuff actually. And getting back from those things gets a little bit harder. And a lot of these therapies, not just TRT, can really be helpful in helping facilitate get some of your older population back to where they want to be a little more quickly. And that's just not a vanity thing. And it's not just a fountain of youth or saying, I want to feel like I was when I was 25 still. There's tangible evidence that as you get into your 60s and into your 70s and older, the more muscle mass you have and the more you're able to exercise and maintain your bone density and the more active you're able to stay, there are clearly benefits for how you age as we get older. One of the things that I talk about more than I care to admit is that we always just assume that as we get older, you're just going to be the way you are now, but older. Mm-hmm. But that's not really what evidence shows us. But some of these therapies can get us a lot closer to living how you are now as you get older, as you get into your 60s and 70s. You know, one of the things that as an orthopedist we treat are hip fractures, right? Why do people get hip fractures? They get osteoporosis as they get older because they're not as active and they don't maintain bone mass. They fall a little bit more easily and they don't have as much muscle mass to prevent that fall. They're not as strong. So one of the things that testosterone, sort of an offshoot benefit is if you're able to maintain better muscle mass as you get into your later years, that can help you stave off some of these other common orthopedic injuries that we see that very frequently becomes a gateway to having not so golden years as you get older. So this is not just about today and wanting to feel good or look good today. This is about how do I get the most out of my next 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life.
Right. Now, once you start a TRT, is this something that you have to be committed to for the rest of your life? Because I know that's one of the things I've heard out there. And sometimes I don't always know exactly what's true, what's partially true, or what's completely false.
So if you want to maintain that same level, yes. So the problem here is that your body's not producing testosterone. Sometimes there's ways, typically in younger people, where you can boost testosterone production, because sometimes it's not the testicles' fault. It's like the signal to them that's not there. So a lot of times we can boost the signal in younger guys, and that'll preserve fertility, and that won't mess with any shutdown or anything like that. But older guys who are not, the problem is production. So you can send the signal as much as you want, but it's just not going to come out. So you don't have to stay on it forever. But if you come off, your level will have to go back to where it was before. So the way testosterone works when you take it from outside is it shuts down your own production. It's just a feedback loop your body has. So with that shut off, if you come off, you will be, lower than where you started, but the body will kind of turn back on. There are medications that we can use to kind of make that happen a little more quickly.
So you can go off.
You can go off. That's a bit,
But the real question is how often do men say, I want to go off?
That's true.
That's like the real question.
Right,
because most guys, even we have some patients sometimes we're like, hey, we're worried about this or that. And they're like, well, I'm not going off. Like, there's no way I'm going off. I'm not going back to what I was, how I was feeling before. And so it's a fair question. It's a valid question. And there are ways to go back off if that's something that needs to be done, which obviously there are circumstances where that will be the case. But it seems to be a small percentage of the time.
And there's no way to say for a 50-year-old man who's done having kids, he doesn't need to be fertile anymore because he doesn't want to create a family. You can't just fix his testosterone level another way to make him produce it himself, right?
That's actually, it's a great point you bring up, because one of the things we haven't touched on is the fertility question.
Yeah.
And just very, very briefly, what Dave was saying is that if you take outside testosterone, whether it's an injection or a pellet or a cream, your body ends up making less of it itself because you don't need it. You're taking it from the outside. That's a reasonable strategy for men generally as they get older or they get outside of the years where they're looking to have kids. For younger guys who might be struggling with low testosterone, there are other options that maintain fertility but also boost your testosterone level. And most importantly, when you go off those treatments, you don't have to worry as much about what happens to your own T because you're not taking testosterone from outside. You're boosting your body's production. So this is where you get into some of the technical nuance of not all TRT philosophy is the same.
Yeah.
And not all we said before, not all patients are the same. You're taking care of people, not everyone's a little different. You're not taking care of cars.
So, sometimes these boosting medications will like kind of reset your body's like set point at what it should be making. So sometimes we'll get guys that'll go on, a medication for like 10 weeks, come back, we'll check their labs like a month after, and they'll still have a higher baseline than when they started. So sometimes you just need like a kickstart for the brain to kind of just increase this signal. We do see that in younger guys. And the whole thing is doing this the right way and getting a guy that's in his like, mid 20s, early 30s, still wants to have a family, putting him on TRT is just not a good idea. You're shutting down things that it's going to affect their life and family in the future. And we're just not, we're not into doing that. So like the big distinguishing thing is this isn't like we were talking about wrestling and everything. This isn't like, we're not doing like steroids. We're not doing like steroid cycles here. Right?
Like Mark McGuire's not walking out of your office.
Right.
That's
The
the
thing is like, we are fixing something. That's like the biggest thing. Like we are fixing a problem. We're not creating other problems by having you be like, Superman, test. We want to get you to the safest part of the upper range of normal, and that's like I said, where you were when you were younger and things were going great. Like your recovery was great. You're waking up early, you're driven to go to work and do all this stuff. And we see that stuff. And we're talking about mental health. The testosterone, you optimize it. It optimizes the parts of the brain that are your reward center and your mood stability, which is affected by cortisol from like the high stress job and everything. So all this stuff works together to fix a problem. It's not just, guys coming in, they want to go on a cycle for 6 weeks just to look great for like the summer. This is, guys aren't asking to come off because they're doing this because there's a problem that this thing is fixing. And they're, give them 6 months and they're just like, come off. Why would I come off it? I feel great. Like I feel like myself again. I think that's like the biggest thing. And there's like a big stereotype behind testosterone because of the abuse in the past, which is why it's a scheduled controlled drug. But yeah, the biggest thing is we're fixing a problem here. That's like what we set out. We set out to fix the problem of low testosterone and the negative effect it has on men's health.
Right. So earlier you had mentioned, when somebody goes in, they'll leave with several syringes filled with the treatment, right? I think you said 4 syringes, right? But you had just mentioned maybe pellet or cream form too. Is there a way to do a pellet or cream form for people that don't like needles, that don't want to have to stick themselves?
So the short answer is yes. And I'm going to try to answer this without getting too sloppy, but I will say that as a physician, the best, most accurate way to do it, to monitor your testosterone levels accurately is going to be injections. And I realize that's not the answer that most people are looking for, but it's just the truth because you can titrate things month to month accurately. If there's a problem or if you're not getting enough, you can fix that relatively quickly. The half-life of testosterone is about 3 days or so. And I won't bore you too much with injection schedules, but the best way to do it, if you're going to do it and you're committed, is really an injection. Is it the only way? No. So are there oral medications that can help improve your own production? Yes, that's generally going to be your younger population. Right at Alpha Male, we don't do pellets, which are basically these little beads that can be put kind of surgically actually under the skin via minor surgical procedure. My personal reservation with pellets is that once they're there, they're very, without doing more procedures, you can't titrate. So if someone's getting too much or not enough, now you have 3 to 6 months of whatever you've done is the way to go. So to me, if you're willing to undergo a minor procedure to have pellets implanted in your body, let me show you what taking an injection looks like. And you're going to realize that while it's an understandable fear, it's not well founded. It's very well tolerated. The challenge with creams, so the androgel is the one that most people know, is that they work transdermally, meaning you rub it on the skin and then your body absorbs it over a period of time. Most clinicians, their concern with the creams is that it's transferable. So if you rub, if you're holding a child and they rub on the area, or if you're with your partner and they rub on the area, some of that testosterone can be transferred. There are also restrictions. There's patches as well, and there's periods of time they need to stay dry, or that you can't wash that area. And so, a lot of these other alternative forms, we're searching for that holy grail of like a pill that would, because that's everyone's looking for a pill. Same thing with weight loss. But the reality is, is our feeling is if you're going to do it and you're really committed and we're going to do this the right way, the best way for us to manage you effectively, accurately, safely is really going to be injection. It's not your only option, but it's really your best one.
The best one, the most efficient one, effective. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
So, we're talking about some of the problems here, and sometimes guys might go into your office and their testosterone's not low. The testosterone's not the problem, right? So I know we've talked a little bit. You just mentioned like peptides, right? What are some of the other treatments you guys offer at Alpha Male, and what might be some of the sort of problems you'd be fixing with those treatments?
So the peptides cover a bunch of different things. So peptides
what is a peptide? I always feel like you got to start there. So. Well, So what is a peptide? Because we were chatting about this a little earlier. Basically, a peptide is a small protein. That's what it is by definition. Whether it's under 50 or under 100 amino acids is not important. But the most common peptide that everyone in your audience has heard of is insulin. Mm-hmm. Right. Insulin's a peptide. So what do you do with insulin? Insulin is a small injection that you take, sometimes once, sometimes multiple times a day, that helps institute a specific physiologic response in your body. In the case of insulin, it helps transport sugar from the blood into cells. Well, there's lots of other types of peptides. The second most common, well-known, is going to be your GLP-1s, your weight loss, your Wegovy, your Ozempic, which I'm sure your audience has heard of. Same kind of thing. It's an injection once a week, usually, that does a specific physiologic response, in which case it's an appetite suppressant, basically, right? We don't have to get into the physiology. I don't know if anyone really wants to hear that. But peptides are generally injectable, and there are lots of different types of peptides. Maybe the third most common one people have heard of is BPC 157, which is a peptide that helps your body recover more quickly. It helps angiogenesis, meaning blood flow to tendons, to muscles. It can help joint inflammation. And there are also peptides that help do other physiologic things, such as increase the production of growth hormone, which is a recovery. So that's what peptides are, just generically speaking. They're generally injections that can have certain physiologic benefits to the body when properly monitored and dosed.
I guess just
Did I do that okay?
That's fine. Perfect. So to touch on, I guess, the GLP-1s and GIPs and these weight loss medications, they pretty much work by having you just eat less, right? So what ends up happening is, except for there's a new one coming out, I guess we won't talk about it because it's not FDA approved yet, but the first two iterations, like the semaglutide and tirzepatide, are basically making you not eat as much. When you're not eating as much, you're like malnourishing yourself. So what people get is they get lean body mass loss as well.
You've all seen those pictures of they call it Ozempic face, right? You've seen those people where they almost lose too much weight. They don't look robust. They don't look strong a lot of the time.
So you're pretty much sacrificing muscle and bone mass. Just to tie it into testosterone with that, testosterone is going to do what? It's going to increase muscle protein synthesis, and it's going to increase your bone mineral density. So the two things that the GLP-1s are kind of,
sabotaging.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times, we take this into consideration when we're talking about dosing, or is it important to go on this? Your testosterone is low and you're on a GLP-1 medication and you're not exercising, you're not optimizing protein intake. You're like, what are you doing?
It sounds like it's going to make it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So have you seen cases where people have maybe tried the GLP-1s, maybe they've been on that for a year, and now they're coming back and saying, yeah, I've lost all this weight, but I have less energy. I'm not as strong or as quick. Should I go on testosterone now? Have you seen something like that?
They can. And like I said, it's not the fix for all, but a lot of times optimizing testosterone is the easiest thing to do to get someone on the road to being healthier.
Mm-hmm. One of the things Dave says all the time too that I love is that nobody has an Ozempic deficiency. Nobody has a Wegovy deficiency. Testosterone, your body is already making it, right? It's a normal, healthy hormone. That's part of our natural physiology. A lot of these other medications, they're not normally found in your body. And so it's helpful when you think about testosterone like that you're really tweaking or optimizing something your body is already supposed to have. Not that these other things aren't spectacularly effective, what they're supposed to do, but I agree with Dave, or I think this is where you were going to go, which was that, testosterone is almost like the easiest kind of, a lot of times the quickest way to get a benefit, and you're not taking something exogenous or something that's not natural in your body.
I feel like also a lot of people that I see that are taking Ozempic and these things, they're not super overweight. I don't know that many people that are 400 pounds taking Ozempic. Right. A lot of them are maybe 50 pounds overweight, where you don't necessarily need to lose all that weight. Then they turn to a stick.
Yeah.
So I feel like something like testosterone, where it has a better overall effect on you, is probably definitely a better alternative to that.
I mean, we live in a society of like, doom scrolling and reels and 15-second TikToks. Like everyone wants I'm going on vacation in 4 weeks. I got to see my abs.
Immediate
Everyone wants the quick fix. And I understand it. But that's not, we're looking at trying to improve lifestyle, improve your overall quality of life, and not necessarily just have you look good for that picture that you need to take in 4 weeks at the pool. Although we get it, we get it, but
because people will ask like, can I, eat differently? Can I, what if we do this? Like people who are opposed to testosterone, not really guys in the clinic. And the answer is, you can do that stuff, but sometimes you're working a lot. You're tired, you have a family, you're doing stuff. You don't have time to work out. You may not have time to improve your diet significantly, but your testosterone's in the toilet, and sometimes, all the times replacing that is going to make you feel better, which is what we're all looking for. And you see that with that, once people start feeling better, they say, hey, maybe I can wake up a little early. I can make time to work out for a half hour before work. When the rest of my family's sleeping, I can get out of the house and go to the gym. And you see these like trickle down effects from like doing this simple thing.
And it compounds, right?
Kind of just
you exercise a little more, you feel better, you feel stronger, you want to keep exercising.
Maybe I'll cut this out of my diet, because I'm feeling better.
Would you say like for like a 45, 50-year-old male or even whatever male that's thinking about going on Ozempic, it's probably better off to go see someone like you guys before they go into that and check their testosterone out, because that might be the issue, the real issue that's causing them to maybe gain weight and whatever.
Yeah, I always say get your blood level checked. What's the harm in just knowing? A lot of guys, it's coming into our place is a no obligation, for treatment or anything. You want to come in, you want to just get a consult, get your blood drawn, I'll go over it with you in a couple of weeks. If you want to do nothing with that information, fine.
It's okay.
Maybe in a few years, at least you have a baseline now. Say like you dropped 15% from where you were in your total test. It's good to at least have these baselines.
Now, you had mentioned that the typical rule of thumb is somebody will drop about a percentage a year. Obviously, there's probably those exceptions to the rule, right? There probably are people that drop 2 or 3% a year.
Sure.
How often do you see that?
Yeah. If they're not, I see guys in their late 20s, early 30s now with frequently total testosterone levels below 400, below 400, which is crazy in your 20s.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure there's plenty of reasons why, like environmental issues, diet, sedentary lifestyles like we talked about before. But
eating Doritos, playing video games in your basement.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially these kids are not, they're on, we used to play, even if we played video games, you'd play like next to someone in your house. Like people are just sitting at home all day. Like they're not going outside.
They're attached to these headsets and they're not even interacting with real people anymore.
Yeah. They're staying up late, to destroying their circadian rhythm, their sleep cycle, and your body needs certain things to produce these chemicals and hormones that it needs to produce. And we're kind of like the current lifestyle is kind of tanking all of that, and we're wondering why. Like what's going on? Like we say, make men manly again, but we're wondering why that's happening, and we're not doing like manly things. We're sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours.
Right.
It's a big thing. So like I said, you can do all of these things to try to increase your testosterone naturally, but sometimes it's just not feasible. And that's kind of like the big thing. You have a career in a law enforcement career, you're working every night, and you have a family you got to take care of during the day. Like when's your rest time?
Right.
That's the big thing.
What are some of the symptoms? Like if I'm like a 30-year-old guy, are there different symptoms from like older guys compared to younger guys? Like as a 30-year-old, I feel like sometimes we just get caught up in like the lifestyle. Like we're working all these shifts, sometimes we're working overtime. We just think that it's just that we're working so much or we're putting so much strain on our body. But what are like the real symptoms of like, hey, maybe I should go get this checked out?
It's usually for the most part, it's like fatigue, low drive, irritable mood, actually. So, you think that like
being more moody than your peers.
There's a few cranky people out there.
Maybe you got some.
So sometimes it's that, and people think about like the steroid era of like, wrestling and everything, and they think of that, but it's a lot of times guys will, be like more aggressive or irritable because they have low testosterone.
Right.
That is something where you replace that and you think it's going to get worse just from like what the stigma is, but their mood improves and they stabilize their mood and they're just more pleasant to be around. The big thing is they're a lot more. It shows that men with higher testosterone levels are definitely more driven. They lie less. That was a big thing that
That's
came out.
Mm.
It's kind of just
I
like
wonder if that comes with the confidence that they have.
yeah,
right?
of course, yeah.
They tend to be like more assertive in social situations, tend to be more confident, tend to be more action driven,
Right.
tend to have more stable mood, tend to have like better relationships with their peers, tend to have better libido. I always say with like testosterone therapy, like libido is probably like number 6 on the list of things that are a benefit there.
Right.
So the benefits across the board can be spectacularly life changing.
The big thing for police officers is emotional resiliency.
Yeah.
You get with optimizing testosterone. So you're better able to make good decisions in stressful situations.
And your threshold for handling stress is generally considered to be higher as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys bring that up because I remember as a kid, in the late 80s, early 90s, you used to hear about like roid rage and people, the people not being able to control their emotions as well when they're, on testosterone and steroids.
So that's a big distinguishment to make that's not what we're doing. We're keeping you within what the medical literature defines as like the normal range, but just maybe at like that top 25% of it. Right. You're going to get all these negative side effects when you're what's called super physiologic. So when your levels are like way above what we define as
what
like
those wrestlers of the day used to be at. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense. You're doing something that's naturally occurring in your body and you're putting it at the high safe levels, not these crazy over the top
abuse levels.
And also,
right, the abuse levels.
And we monitor the things that you need to monitor to make sure it remains safe.
Right.
There's 2 like real things that'll happen on testosterone therapy, depending on what your sensitivity is and what your dose is and everything. The 2 things are your red blood cell production can go up, and your estrogen levels can go up. Estrogen's a little controversial in treating high estrogen numbers. Usually the general consensus for people who know what they're doing with this is you let estrogen go until it's making symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Because estrogen is protective of the prostate. It is, in good levels, it's good for the joints. It's good for your libido. It's good for your overall mood. So we don't want to tank it. You see guys that come in that they're on an estrogen blocker with like a low dose test and their estrogen's in the toilet and they feel like garbage.
Terrible.
And you tell them stop taking that, their estrogen comes up and they feel a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of nuance, with this.
Right. You're treating people, not cars.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Everyone's body's a little different.
And typically people think of, estrogen levels in women, but men have estrogen too.
Right.
Yeah. And not only that, but it's important. It's important for mood stability and overall sense of well-being as well.
The cool thing that I learned a little recently was if you adjust the units for the same unit for testosterone and estrogen in a women actually have much more testosterone in their bodies than they have estrogen. So they don't have as much as men do. But you think estrogen's like this, like
the woman hormone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And it's really men need a healthy amount of estrogen. So we say it's not the enemy of it, but if other things get too high, we worry about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important to go to someone who knows what they're talking about and doing, so they're not tanking your estrogen and feeling like crap. And you're like, this testosterone's not doing anything for me,
right?
And they come off treatment and they don't go back to it, and it's it just wasn't managed properly.
Right. So obviously, your practice is called Alpha Male, and a lot of what we're talking about here is going to appeal to the males. Stuff that men are generally interested in. But do you have any treatments or anything that you do to benefit the women out there?
We do have a partner called Phoenix Wellness. Mm-hmm. We have a website for that. It's FEINIXwellness.com.
Clever name.
I couldn't think of something. We do like the weight loss peptides and the recovery and so getting back to the peptides, actually, we talked about BPC 157 for a second, but that's probably one of the more popular ones, but the other ones are the growth hormone boosting or growth hormone production boosting peptides. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that we deal with are actually very safe. What they do is they mimic a signal your brain sends to your pituitary gland in your brain to make more growth hormone. The cool thing about these peptides is they preserve your negative feedback loop. So it's like impossible to overdose on these peptides.
And you can go off of them.
And you can go off,
so when you stop them, it's fine.
So it's not a lifetime commitment.
That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it.
So there's one of them that you can do indefinitely. But once you come off, your levels will just gradually come back down to where they were. Mm-hmm. So you get all the benefits of increased growth hormone production, which is going to be, lean muscle mass, fat metabolism, better healing, better looking,
quicker recovery.
Quick recovery.
Yep.
Improved mood and like mental cognition as well. But there's no shutdown with these things. So that's probably, one of the more popular ones that we deal with as well. So the main ones that we usually deal with are, the BPC 157, so the recovery peptides and the growth hormone producing peptides. And we do those for women too through our partner Phoenix. And it's been going really well. But the big thing is getting your blood checked, just making sure that there aren't any underlying problems that are causing things. And once you get like the green light, everything's fine. Then you just feel good about, hey, this is a good idea. Right. We're not looking forward to anything bad happening.
Yeah. So I would say over the last 6 to 12 months, I've been hearing more and more about peptides.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even on other podcasts, I hear Joe Rogan talking about peptides all the time. Yeah. Right. So I think one of the appealing things, at least from my point of view, is it's not a lifetime commitment, right? It's not something that you have to worry about taking for the next, God willing, I live another, 50 years. I don't have to worry about taking it for 50 more years.
You don't. Yeah. And some of them we cycle for shorter periods of time, like 4 to 6 weeks or so, depending on, and we can, when you come in and talk about it, we can go into all the different ones. But yeah, that's the big thing. So a lot of guys will come in, their test isn't the problem. So we say, hey, let's, we measure IGF-1 levels. We measure things in the blood that
comprehensive blood work.
Yeah. So let's say, hey, your IGF-1 level isn't, in the upper range of normal. Maybe we can try, a growth hormone secreting peptide to see if that'll make you feel better.
Right.
As a physician, like I have, and I talk with a lot of my other orthopedic colleagues, I anticipate like the whole world, when we're talking about peptides, I think we are at the proverbial tip of the iceberg right now. We're scratching the surface of what we're going to be able to do. And I think that right now we're talking about peptides. We're trying to educate your audience because people hear about it. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I anticipate that in 20, 30 years, we're going to look back at 2026 and probably chuckle at like how there was like so little knowledge and look at all these things we're able to do to help optimize the body and get you to recover quickly from an injury or from surgery, get you to bounce back quicker on your workouts, better be able to regulate your blood sugar, your insulin levels. Who knows, where insulin falls in this whole thing. So I'm excited to see where this world goes, but I sincerely expect that you're going to see this more and more in mainstream medicine. What I see as a physician who's sort of in the, like the fat middle part of my career, where I'm obviously not a young guy. I don't think I'm old yet, is that, physicians, my age and older, there's a lot of, the tendency to dismiss, I don't know what that is. We didn't learn about that in school, or I haven't, I think it's all nonsense. And I think that's unfortunate because medicine is a world where you should always be learning and improving. Even in the world of orthopedics, I do things differently in surgery now than I did 10 years ago. And I expect 10 years from now, it'll be different. You need to always be learning, improving, be open to evidence that shows something is better than what you're currently doing.
Always be willing to learn.
And the younger physicians tend to be much more, at least open to the idea that what we're talking about, these peptides may truly be like a game-changing world for how we treat people. Instead of giving people pills for diseases and problems, what if we talk about like fine-tuning the engine and getting you to run in an optimized way to help limit the number of drugs that you need to fix your high cholesterol or your high blood pressure, or your anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. If you just optimize this beautiful machine that we already are all blessed with, and get it to work as best as possible, you don't need blood pressure pills most of the time, or cholesterol pills, or anxiety pills, or whatever else. That's what we're talking about. Optimizing your natural, normal physiology.
It almost sounds like it'll be like a daily vitamin almost. Like the way that you're describing it, it sounds like something that you could take daily or weekly that like it would.
Once they get a delivery system that can like pass the stomach and liver as like the first pass, so a lot of limitations.
Like with taking a pill. Yeah, that's the big hurdle with these things.
Everybody always wants a pill. Like I hear about with the GLP-1s too. Like I mean, you see advertisements all the time, or reading like a CNBC article about the company that's trying to develop the pill form of a GLP-1, so people don't have to stick themselves.
Yeah. It's a huge deterrent. Is it a big deal? It's not.
Right.
But I understand it, right? I understand where the hesitancy comes.
As a diabetic, I took shots every day for years, and now they upgrade to like the pump. I only take it like 3 days, like every 3 days. But I feel like it really isn't that bad. Once you start doing it, you get used to it, and you start moving around where you're not injecting yourself in the same location constantly. You move it around, and that way you're not like.
Needles are a weird thing. Like I have like big guys come in for surgery, big, tatted up, jacked, and they need to get their IV, and they're like fainting in the chat. Oh my god, I'm going like I don't like it's ubiquitous though. You see it all over the place, and so it's not. Like I said, I understand it, and I think when we can get to that point, it's going to be a huge leap forward. But we probably have a little work to go still.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think one of the big takeaways here too is that the treatments that you guys perform over at Alpha Male, it's all within certain guidelines. There's science behind it. This isn't the black market of steroids, right? This isn't going into some gym and buying something in a locker room, right? This is a lot different.
It was a joy bag of donuts.
Yeah, right. This is a lot different. This is something that would be safe and beneficial to people, not something that is potentially abused.
I think, Dave,
dangerous.
What's really important to us too is that is getting these conversations out of the shadows, getting it away from searching on the internet and ordering your stuff from who the hell knows where, and getting it out in the open, discussing these things with shining a light on it, and what are the pros, what are the cons, is everything puppy dogs and rainbows? Obviously not, but there's far more good than bad that can come from this stuff, and the first step is having medical professionals embrace it, talk about it, acknowledge it, and do it in a proper supervised way, or at least offer that to people who that would be appealing to try to minimize some of the other stuff that's been going on with testosterone.
Getting it sort like where you're getting it from is the big thing. So all of our peptides are sourced from, they're called 503A and 503B pharmacies. There's different designations on how they can get you the medication, but they're all done in these pharmacies. Yeah. They're not coming from, overseas. And the good thing about us, we say you're not doing any math at home. So you come in, you pick up the compounds, and they're already reconstituted. It's fluid. It's not a powder. You don't have to put water in, mix it up, and do chemistry at home. It's really,
we want
really
to be safe, and so the less X factor there is for our patients to have to calculate stuff.
Everything is labeled. You go this many units. I show you the first injection. I'll show you on a dummy syringe that we have. This is where you pull back to. This is how you get the air out. Make sure the dose is what you need. But we set out to make really just something that people feel comfortable talking about this stuff, because we're talking about something that people talk in the shadows, but it's not a bad thing. So it's we want to make a place where, hey, come ask someone who has, we treat a lot of people, and even just evidence from our own patients. Everyone is doing well. No one's having any, where are all these problems, right? Where's the danger in any of these things? And just to go back, what is a peptide? And it really is, we're finding signals. They're these things that signal things to happen in the body. Because you're talking about safety and all this stuff. It's just your body's already doing this. We're saying, hey, let's do more of this, or let's get the signal just to be local around your knee or around your shoulder. So your body's kind of just pumping things to that area to heal your shoulder pain, your knee pain, you had an injury. It's just to talk about even the Achilles tendon rupture guy that we had. So
anecdote, you always want to be careful as a physician and as a scientist, but along my practice journey, seeing certain just to be specific, I've seen certain patients recovering from surgical procedures who were taking BPC post-operatively. And I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it myself, the difference in recovery. Now, you got to be careful in the world of medicine with anecdotes, meaning, here's an example, and therefore everyone has that benefit. I'm always very aware of that. But I'm a big believer that where there's smoke, there's fire. And when you start to see certain things over and over again, at some point, you can't just dismiss it, and you can't ignore it or just pretend like it's not real. It's real. I'm seeing it on a regular basis. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is when we talk about getting this stuff out of the shadows, if any of your audience or if anyone does come to our actual clinic itself, we've purposely set it up to have not a medical office feel, or at least the main area where patients are hanging out. So we've got, big screen TV and some couches, and it's a male. I like to say it's almost like a lounge and a locker room kind of thing. So it's guys are hanging out. Now, not everyone may want that, but I do think a lot of people do. And when you're sitting around talking to other people who have the same questions or the same interests or interested in learning about the same things, the point is get it out of the shadows, get it out in the open, talk about this stuff. embrace it, and that's what we're trying hard to do.
I've had people tell me to skip them and take like the next guy because they're like hanging out on the couch watching TV like Saturday morning and they don't want to go home. But it's the whole point was to make this this should be like a comfortable conversation.
Right.
It's a real thing. It's super helpful. It's good for your health. It's good for your mental health. And people are not like taking advantage of this like super simple thing that's been around for a while,
Right.
Because there's some stigma from abuse in the past.
Right. I think it is becoming more, mainstream acceptable, right, in the views of many people. But there is still an obvious stigma out there in some aspects too. Whether it be the WWF wrestlers from the 80s or even baseball in the 90s, right? A lot of baseball players were getting in trouble for accusations of taking performance-enhancing drugs, right? But again, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that kind of stuff was a lot different than what we're talking about here.
That was all. Yeah. It was abuse.
Yeah.
That was all abuse, right? So for what we're using in our area of medicine, this is not abuse of a compound to be on a professional sports team. This is to not feel like you need a nap at 2 p.m. every
right. Right.
So
after a big lunch.
Yeah, so it's a little different. So that's like I said it before. That's like the big designation to make that this is improving health. And the big thing was there was a study done called the Traverse study, like this famous study on testosterone, pretty much said that if you treat men with low testosterone and you give them, in the normal range, there is no negative effect on cardiovascular risk compared to placebo. So compared to like a sugar pill or like water injection, they all had like the same risk throughout the whole entire study. And that's when the FDA raised some of their black box warning on testosterone products. So we dealt with that. Even just like the insurance companies aren't like up to date on, all of this stuff because it's not like so out there. So where they wanted us to put kind of like in our consents, like some of the risks that are completely outdated and, shown in studies to just not be true. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't increase your risk of major adverse cardiovascular events. It doesn't cause prostate cancer.
It's probably protective.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
So there's big studies that have like refuted all of this stuff. So we want to get this out there because sometimes the difference between, someone going on treatment or not is hearing stuff that just isn't true.
Right. Yeah. Now, if it's probably, maybe not proven, but probably protective of prostate cancer, is it probably protective of other cancers too? Could you say that yet?
It's tough to say, but
I'd be careful about saying that.
We're enhancing the body's ability to do things. Like we're increasing antioxidant production with testosterone. We're optimizing how dopamine and serotonin work in the brain. So we're improving mood. We're doing a lot of things. So does that lead to less, health problems in the future? I'm sure it does. I don't think
arguably, just common sense. Right.
If
you have
the clues kind of line up.
The clues line up, but in the world of medicine, you have to be careful about what you assert then because you need to have evidence, which sometimes is a little tricky. But obviously, if you have men in their middle age and later years who are exercising more muscle mass, more physically active, by definition, I would argue that makes them more resilient to disease, more likely to have, better glucose control, which we know has a lot to do with cardiovascular disease as well. So to me, all the dots sort of line up to back that statement up, but without something to say, hey, look at this study where we looked at 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people. You have to be careful.
You have to be careful about what you say medically, right? Makes sense. So recently, Tanner and I have started following you guys on your social media. You want to just let everybody know out there, like where they could see, some of your social media posts. What how do they follow you, and where is your office actually located?
So our big thing on social media is Alpha Male Restoration on Instagram. There's a TikTok, right? I can't get into TikTok. I don't know.
TikTok's interesting because
like a 20-year-old.
So many young people are on TikTok, and we actually just created a PBA TikTok the last couple of months. And I have to say, even myself, I've been on it maybe 5 times. I can't get used to that as being part of my normal routine.
Yeah. So we try to do some like educational posts, like keeping it not like super scientific. Sometimes I just can't. I can't stop myself, but we try to do some like funny stuff too, like relatable stuff. But it's Alpha Male Restoration on Instagram. Our clinic is in East Setauket on Main Street, so it's 220 Main Street in East Setauket. That's our first location, and that's where we do everything. So we do blood work in house. So I draw your blood when you come in. Everything. So blood work does go through insurance. I know there's questions about that. Insurance does cover blood work. Treatment right now we're not associated or taking insurances. So we can be transparent about the pricing when you come in. But that's something that's not covered by insurance. The peptides are not covered by insurance at all. You're just across the board.
Not at this point. Hopefully in the future that's something that changes.
As the science evolves and as it gets accepted.
I mean, listen, the reality is insurance companies aren't super incentivized to keep up with the times. It's just more stuff they have to cover. So that's probably not something that's going to change in the immediate future.
On the other side of that, like I feel like with all the benefits of it, probably they'd be spending less money on different things.
Right. Does it prevent other?
Totally make that. You're assuming that they work logically and they make decisions all the time based on that. But I feel the same way. Right.
But the company that makes this drug and making this much money isn't going to say, all right, let's not make this anymore. Someone else is going to make more money.
The dollars and cents are always going to add up to them.
That's a whole different thing.
That's a totally different podcast.
That could be a whole nother episode for sure. So, David, Michael, we appreciate you guys coming on. We appreciate you kind of, educating our viewership on some of the treatments you guys have and, a lot of the benefits that are potentially out there for people that are feeling a difference as they are aging and the changes in their body.
I can't thank you guys enough for letting us come this morning and for having us. And hopefully this was helpful for your viewer base and for you guys. And obviously, if there's any other questions that we could be helpful with, we'd love to be in contact.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
We appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you.
Awesome.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.